According to the Canadian Airports Council, these remain turbulent times for this country's regional airports. While larger airports are seeing a rebound, smaller ones are still sitting far below 2019 levels. Nadia MacDonald is Executive Director of the Atlantic Canada Airports Association. So, Ms. MacDonald, what kind of days are these for airports in this region, particularly the smaller ones?
Yeah, so regional markets have recovered at a slower rate. So some regional markets, smaller regions, were about 20 points behind the national average. In Atlantic Canada, larger airports have almost fully recovered. But like the rest of the country, we are still seeing big gaps in small markets. So some of our regional airports are currently between 50 and 70% recovered. And as we move into the fourth quarter of the year, those numbers are projected to drop to between 46 and 65%.
So, what kind of an impact is that having?
Yeah, so some of the regions that it does affect are similar to across the country, regions like London and Sault Ste. Marie and Windsor. Comparably in Atlantic Canada, they would be airports like Bathurst, Sydney, and Gander. And since I'm talking to CBC Nova Scotia, I'll give you Nova Scotia example. So connectivity between regional airports like Sydney into Halifax, it's vital. It's vital for economic development of rural Nova Scotia, rural Atlantic Canada. This connection is so important, to the continued growth of that region. So for businesses and frequency of flight, it's a game changer. And it's the main reason why it could be the main reason why businesses either set up in the region or don't. So, for example, there used to be 5 flights a day, and now there are none.
And obviously, that connectivity, that's a big impact or big issue there. Where there are flights, what impact is it having on fares?
Yeah, so you know what? There's a lot of different factors at play that air carriers are contending with. So there's a few things that they're contending with right now, and supply chain challenges, engines, we've heard about manufacturing issues there. Some have been recalled, and that impacts their fleet. There's market shifts, and they've been moving to larger aircraft. So during the pandemic, air carriers took an opportunity to kind of streamline their fleet and decided to use larger planes upon return. So this allows airlines to fly less frequently, but carrying more passengers. So for airlines, that means, less fuel costs because of less flights are flying, and also means larger profit margins for them. But this also means less connectivity for smaller markets.
And I
And
suppose also a question of survivability for some of these airports, wondering how long you can continue without having these connecting flights. What are those conversations like between the airports and the airlines in that regard?
Yeah, so you know what? There is a lot being done. We still need help, though. We want to see aviation supported and invested in, like the economic value and the driver that it brings to our region. And we're working collaboratively with provincial partners and federal ones, and the premiers are working together and discussing this. Lots of great minds are working together and are at the table to help reconnect our region. And again, because our sector is so vital to our way of life. But you know what? More can always be done.
So, what would you like to see done? I mean, obviously, you're having these conversations and government's involved and so on, but what kind of needs to happen in your mind?
You know what? We've been calling for infrastructure funding for small airports so they can get through this time and rebuild. We're working with our partners and the government in Atlantic Canada to raise the importance of air travel and air service to these smaller communities. And it's really, as mentioned, it's a vital way of our life. So we're asking for really, it's going to take full partnership. If you look at the US, they have essential air service programs, and they have the Small Communities Air Service Program, and that supports smaller routes in smaller communities while they build back. And it really, it takes all partners working together to make this happen. And there really is true collaboration amongst airports and airport partners and government in Atlantic Canada to work together to keep our regions, our workers and our healthcare workers and passengers connected to each other, within Atlantic Canada, to Canada and the rest of the world.
Any sense of how quickly things might be able to change? I mean, those are some pretty steep hills if there's pilot shortages and infrastructure concerns and change of aircraft changing and that kind of size of the aircraft changing, that kind of thing. What's the forecast looking like?
Listen, we're working super hard with these partners. I know everybody's in the same, mindset that this needs to happen sooner than later. And we're really just working together as fast as we can to see how we can, continue to have our partners and air carriers and airports just really continue to work together collaboratively to get us and keep us connected.
Okay, Nadia, it's a big job, I know. Thanks so much for talking to us about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.